Hi, welcome to my new video, which is all about the Land Rover Freelander1 as a combined video of what sort of things to look for if you're buying one second-hand. And this is the facelifted Freelander1 2004 model. And also it's a preview video for all of the fixes that I'm going to do on this car, which is all of the sort of typical faults that you might find of a car of this age. So this car I bought pretty cheap for its mileage. So it's 58,000 miles total, which seems to be backed up by the MOT certificates. I've yet to check whether it's the original engine number or not. But one of the reasons it was cheap is because it's got a bit of damage on it. This pretty nasty looking dent, which I thought might be fairly straightforward to knock out from the inside. But there's a second skin as part of the structure on the inside. So I've ordered a repair kit, one of these glue on tab repair kits where you glue it on and pull it out with a sort of vice like machine, which we'll see later, hopefully in one of my other videos, see how well we can do that sort of job. Never tried it before, but willing to try. And the other reason it was cheap is because the engine is not running properly. It's the BMW 2-litre turbo diesel engine, TD4 they call it. It's smoking and won't rev beyond 2,500 revs. Previous owner had disconnected the mass airflow sensor, which allowed it to run a little bit better, didn't smoke quite so much, but when you put your foot down at around the same sort of revs, the revs were fluctuating up and down. But that's an indicator that perhaps the MAF is not working properly. Strangely enough, there weren't any OBD2 diagnostic codes that came up when I put my little cheap scanner on it. Maybe if you had a more expensive scanner or Land Rover test book system, it might come up with something, but nothing on the basic one. So what I've done is I've ordered one of these upgrade kits, which is a more reliable, better mass airflow sensor. I think it's something like a Pierberg or something, but also with an interface module that gives you some optional power and torque boosts. That was about 200 UK pounds. So we'll come to that later as well in another video. So I've partly started having a look at dismantling the engine, see what service parts I require, and I'm going to give it a full service. So just got the parts this morning for full service. Amazingly, this whole service kit was £60, 60 UK pounds, including 10 litres of decent engine oil, the oil filter, and also, quite usefully, the crankcase breather, not filter. It's normally a filter. This is an upgraded part. It's an oil separator, which means both it should never block and you shouldn't need to ever have to change it. And I think there's also another breather filter around the same area. The air filter and the pollen filter. So 60 quid, that's pretty good value. I'll put some links in the description later. Very cheap parts actually. And this is the beauty of having Land Rovers and having quite old cars, that the parts are very cheap. Talking about cheap parts, this, which is a window repair kit, so it has the cables for these cable operated electric windows. A couple have gone on the car. That amazingly was only 10 quid. And that is for the rear window. So again, this is quite a common thing. These windows go down, electric windows, has to go down to basically release the window from underneath the edge of the top so the door can open. I guess water gets down the little seal and gets onto the cables, they rust and eventually break. So somebody's had a go at it, I can see, and unfortunately they dismantled it all and left off all the bolts, so I'm going to have to find some bolts. The motor's off, hanging off, and the cable's been cut. Looks like it's a fairly straightforward repair though. I've done the door windows before. This is probably similar, if not a little bit easier. That'll be a separate video. Picked up the Haynes workshop manual for about 10 quid on eBay. Useful reference for all the torque wrench settings and any other bits you get stuck on dismantling. That's the later manual for 03 to 06. There's a couple of workshop manuals covering different years. Other typical faults you might find on a car of this age is the door locks, the central locking door locks. made by somebody like Bosch. But they're self-contained door lock units inside the door, which you can get to. You can dismantle, you can take them apart, and you can fix. I've done it before. The fault comes down to the little tiny electric motor in there. Basically the brushes on those wear out, and you can just bend the brushes to get the motor operating again, to last probably a couple of years. I think what I'll try next time I fix one is to get some supplementary central locking door lock motors and just put those in parallel and get those. Last time I looked, for about £15. We'll see if that's possible. If not, we'll have to dismantle the lock again. So there's a couple of door locks gone. The passenger electric window, I think the cable's come off or is broken, similar to the back one. I've done one of those before, and I think I've got another YouTube video on my channel, so I'm not going to bother doing a YouTube video of that again. But it's something to look for if you're thinking of buying one of these. Check the locks, check all the electric windows work properly. Not that a common a fault, I don't think, but somebody's botched up these mirrors here with some glue round, and this rather botchy looking screw. Obviously the spring in the wing mirror went or something. I'm sure we can do a better repair than that. There's not too many other things that really go wrong on these cars. Driver's seat, that is quite common. So as you can see down here, these are part leather seats. This bolster sticks out quite a lot to give you a good support when you're driving, but it does mean it catches quite a lot on the trousers and maybe keys and so on, and it's quite often you'll see these are torn. I do have a repair video on that, so look at my channel for that. Have that already. Can't decide whether I'm just going to put some polymer sealant over it to make it look like leather and fill that in, or whether I'll bother cutting out the leather and replacing it. Leave that down to you perhaps. Could do either. If you're buying one of these, look for any warning lights in the dash, particularly something like traction control and brakes, which is quite commonly caused by the brake switch wearing out, which is, I'm going to show it now, but it's basically right up there, top of the brake pedal. It just gets a bit worn out, very easy and cheap to replace, and that fixes what sometimes people call the three amigos lights. You get three warning lights on the dash coming up. In the past I've also had it caused by, on the older design, I think they used to have the hill descent switch somewhere around here. I'm not sure it was always there, but there was a switch underneath the gear knob that worked loose that also caused that error. While we're on the gear stick, you can see this one is a bit worn out. I'm not sure that's consistent with 58,000 miles, but the service history seems to back it up. And I've seen this on quite a few pictures of other Freelanders, so I guess it's quite common. You can get generic gear stick gaiters quite cheaply, so I've ordered one of those, and also with a new gear stick knob as well. Probably it was only like 10 or 15 pounds. While we're here, you see these have been a bit eaten by, I think, a dog. Still work okay. Quite expensive to replace, because really the best way to do it is to change this whole seatbelt buckle with the safety seatbelt pre-tensioning bits that are down the bottom there. And instead I've gone for a much cheaper option, which you can get some silicone covers for these for a few quid on eBay. Just slots over the whole lot, just makes it look a bit smarter. Whole car needs a good clean. As you can see, it's a bit yuck. Symptomatic of the car not being very well looked after, which is probably why it's got some issues with the engine running, I suspect. Probably hasn't had a service in years, so we'll need to check everything. I'll do a video on servicing it. Normal thing, of course, is oil filters, air filters, crankcase breather, check the brakes. So we'll do all that. There are other videos, of course, on YouTube, but for completeness I'll probably do that as well, just so you have a complete set of videos. The other thing is reasonably common is the diesel fuel pump can often be noisy. This one is certainly noisy. It's making an odd little scratching noise, which I'm not going to show now, but maybe on another video later. The diesel on these later models, the diesel filter and the fuel pump is located behind the rear offside inner wheel arch on the right hand side. You need to take the wheel off to get to it. It looks fairly straightforward to do. Not done one before, but it shouldn't be a problem. Managed to pick up a new diesel pump for about £20 on eBay. The fuel filter is under a tenner, I think. Doesn't really need changing. It's not coming up with any errors. Car does run. Might possibly be contributing towards the poor running of the engine not revving correctly, but mainly because it's making a bit of a horrible noise, and they do sometimes fail. For 20 quid I decided to change it for a new pump while I'm doing everything else. So that's about it, I think, in terms of what we're going to fix coming up and the sort of things you should look for. Obviously look for dents and scratches and so on, rusty exhaust, typical things. This is a 14-year-old car. Actually, I think it looks quite smart for 14 years old. And the good thing about these Freelanders is they don't really rust. You look underneath and very, very good rust protection. They last for years if the mechanics is well looked after. Main thing is the door locks and windows, but those are all fixable and fairly cheaply. You can get the repair cables for both the doors and the rear window. And I do have a bit of a soft spot for the Freelander. I think it looks quite nice, drives quite nice. The look of the facelift model I think is a little bit better, a little bit sharper. So yeah, not too much wrong with these cars really. I've had the 1.8 petrol Freelander before. In fact, my daughter's driving it. Of course, they have the reputation for the head gasket going, but they can be more reliable, and I've got a YouTube video on making the K-Series engine reliable. Basically, it's a better design, head gasket, and some changes to the thermostat, and you can put the stronger oil rail on it. You might get a little bit of water seepage past that metal gasket, but it'll never fail completely and is reasonably reliable, quite nice to drive. As I say, this is the diesel TD4 engine, which is actually a lot more complicated. Has its own set of faults relating to BMW, I wouldn't say lack of reliability, but some bits of the engineering are not very impressive. And some faults came out like the crankcase breather filter, which is often overlooked on an engine service. They can block up and cause all sorts of problems with the interior of the engine, pressurizing, pushing oil out in various different places into the turbo and so on. So I've heard on the internet. And the Bosch mass airflow sensor is not particularly reliable either, as I've also seen and heard on the internet, which I think is what has gone wrong on this car, and we're changing it to the more reliable Pierberg one that's fitted to Mercedes. So that's it for an intro video and a quick indication of the sort of things to look for if you're buying a Freelander or thinking of buying one. Oh, one more thing, Propshaft. They say after about 70,000 miles the viscous coupling unit on the Propshaft gets a bit stiff. On the last one, which we bought about that mileage, I disconnected the rear Propshaft, so you can see if yours has got one or not by looking underneath. Maybe not from this side, maybe from the other side. Here we go, from the right hand side of the vehicle. This is the rear Propshaft. That is the viscous that is a viscous coupling unit. That whole thing can be just unbolted from the gearbox, the intermediate reduction drive, and it then will just run in front wheel drive, two wheel drive, which is no problem at all, makes it a fraction more economical. As I say, that's what I did on the last one. You can get reconditioned viscous couple units for about £250. Have a look on I believe eBay or an internet search, and you can test whether the viscous coupling unit is getting stiff by taking off the handbrake, jacking the car up just on this side, and put a bar or torque wrench on one of the nuts, and see how difficult it is to move the wheel, which will be moving against the viscous coupling unit. And there are various tests that you can probably look up on the internet to tell you how quickly for a certain weight that wheel should turn. Not going to go into that now. So at 58,000 miles, I'm hoping this viscous coupling unit is okay. I can see from looking underneath that the bearings around the VCU have been changed. It's because they're reasonably new looking, so I hope the unit itself is not too bad. and I think that is it. They're nice cars, but just bear in mind those possible faults. They're very practical, nice looking, I think, quite nice to drive. The off-roading capability I think is reasonable. I've yet to really try it in a Freelander, but attempted to do so. A lot of it is all down to the choice of tyres. Some people put lift kits on them. I've seen a couple with 2-inch lift kits. They'd be tempted to do as well. They are reasonable off-road because they use the electronics to brake a wheel that's spinning, which makes the other wheels get traction and allow you to move, more so than old-fashioned Defenders or series Land Rovers in that respect. They didn't have any electronics to do a similar thing. So thanks for watching. Good luck if you buy one, and look out for links to coming videos on fixing lots of various different faults. Okay, thanks for watching, and bye.